So now you can picture from looking at this, at the layout of this room here, you can picture these events now unfolding. Verse 30, while I was thus in the act of calling upon God, I discovered a light appearing in my room, which continued to increase until the room was lighter than at noonday, when immediately a personage appeared at my bedside, standing in the air, for his feet did not touch the floor. And then he goes on to describe the physical appearance and the characteristics of the angel Moroni in these next few verses, and his robe. Then notice what he says, most peculiar in verse 33, this opening message from Moroni. Verse 33, he called me by name. Are you noticing a pattern? The very first thing Joseph Smith heard in the sacred grove was his name, Joseph. This is my beloved son. What's the first thing that he's recording, hearing? In verse 33, he called me by name and said unto me that he was a messenger sent from the presence of God to me, and that his name was Moroni, that God had a work for me to do. There are some people who are trying to tear down the idea that the Book of Mormon actually happened, speaking of it in terms of it being inspired fiction or a parable kind of a story to teach correct principles. But Nephi didn't really exist, and Captain Moroni isn't really a historical figure, and Mormon and Moroni weren't real. I love the fact that in this story, the angel who comes happens to be the last of that long line of Nephite writers in the book, and he comes as a real person, a real being, from the presence of God, not as a fictional character like somebody that you see in a made-up movie who now comes. This is a real person. The angel Moroni was a real historical figure, and I love the fact that he's delivering this message to Joseph as a messenger from the very presence of God. Notice he tells Joseph that there's a book deposited in verse 34, written upon gold plates, giving an account of the former inhabitants of this continent. This isn't language that leaves a lot of wiggle room open for the book to be historical fiction or a parable. He's speaking in absolutes. Joseph, I'm a real person. I left a physical, tangible, real book. It's not theoretical, and it's in a hill very close to your home. And it contains a record of the ancient inhabitants of this continent. And in it, you're going to find the fullness of the everlasting gospel as delivered by the Savior to the ancient inhabitants. Oh, and by the way, it also is going to contain, the box that you're going to find is going to contain 2 stones in silver bows, and they're fastened to a breastplate, which constitutes the Urim and Thummim. As Taylor mentioned in an earlier episode last year, Urim and Thummim, the I am makes it plural. So it's is light, Thumm's perfection. So it's the lights and perfections through which you're going to bring this book to light, to the perfection of building up the kingdom. It's going to come through this beautiful symbolic, these interpreters called the Urim and Thummim. And by the way, he says, whoever's in possession and use of those stones is what constitutes a seer. Joseph, you're not just a prophet. You're now going to take on a role as a seer. And in the Book of Mormon, we learn in the section with King Mosiah that a seer is even greater than a prophet. It's to be able to see things past, present, and future. And it's a prophet, seer, and a revelator. You're going to see Joseph growing in his understanding of the responsibilities as they get placed upon his shoulders as he continues to move forward in faith as the prophet of the restoration. Notice he then does some amazing teaching, some tutelage Joseph has had, we love in the church talking about how Joseph only had 3 years of formal education, and that's true. In a frontier sense, they didn't go to school at the end of August, like in a lot of Western cultures today, and get out at the end of May or 1st of June. That isn't their school cycle. These are farmers. They're struggling to make a living off the land. So the 3 years of formal education that we afford to Joseph are actually truncated from what we get in our world today, because they're out clearing the land in the early spring and planting. They're harvesting well into the fall time. They generally do most of their schooling where he learns basic reading, writing, and arithmetic in those winter months, late fall, winter, and early spring, when your help isn't needed out in the fields. So we love saying that he had 3 years of formal education. Can I just say that Joseph had a lot more than that? Because he has a heavenly tutor, a mentor, a teacher, a guide, whatever you want to call Moroni. He's going to start teaching Joseph, and he's going to show him things in vision. He's going to explain things. He's going to expound and open up the scriptures to him, both ancient and prophecies of Joseph's role moving into the future. And he's going to be connecting all of these different dispensations of the gospel, so that in Joseph's mind he can start to see more clearly what God is going to do through him. So you'll notice in this encounter on this night, you're going to get some quoted and taught scriptures from the Old Testament. From the New Testament, we're going to get stuff that is directly applicable from the Book of Mormon, from this prophet of the Book of Mormon, as well as prophecies moving forward into the future that ancient prophets also saw and foretold. And now Moroni is going to be bringing these all together and placing them on the shoulders of this young 17-year-old farm boy, this no-name, as far as the elite of the world in 1823 is concerned. Joseph Smith is a nobody as far as they're concerned. But look what Joseph Smith is as far as heaven is concerned. Look at verse 36. After telling me these things, he commenced quoting the prophecies of the Old Testament. He first quoted part of the 3rd chapter of Malachi, and he quoted also the 4th or the last chapter of the same prophecy.